Welcome to another tutorial, guys. This one is going to be showing you how I base my Necrons. I was in the process of basing my Scarabs from the Indomitus box, and I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to just show you how I do them in its own dedicated video so that I'm not having to repeat myself in each of the painting tutorials I do. So this is just an example of what it will look like. This is the test Scarab that I did before committing the scheme to the rest of them. If you're interested in seeing how this is done, I might already have a video on my channel showing you how to do that. If not, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss when that's posted. Right, let's get to it. I've already primed my Scarab bases with Chaos Black spray, which is what we have here. What I'm going to do is, I think there's quite a lot of empty room on here, and it didn't look particularly interesting when I sort of dry fit this Scarab model onto the space. I just added a few rocks myself. I've already picked out the rocks I want to use. Got these two here. They've been washed to make sure they're not dusty. I get my rocks from Amazon. I just bought these two containers of sort of various different sizes and types of rocks for variety. I think that it wasn't expensive at all. But the way I adhere them to the base is just with a bit of super glue. So you want to make sure that your rocks aren't too high on these bases, because the Scarab Swarms, as you see, don't lift very far off the base. So you just want to dry fit them, make sure they're no higher than maybe the sort of rock that comes with the model. Dry fit them, make sure you're happy with the placement, and then apply a bit of super glue to the bottom. You don't need much. If it comes out, plop it on, shift it around so that's where you want it. Make sure you don't stick it to yourself like I almost just did. And there we go. I will just wait for that to cure, and then I'll be right back. Right, that super glue is now set, so the next thing is going to be to apply our texture paint. And for this step I use Citadel's Astro Granite. Now to do that, you can use one of these texture tools. However, I find the delicacy of application with these a bit questionable, so I use an old brush with artificial hairs. That I don't mind if it gets a bit sort of frayed or ruined, but I just find the application so much easier with this. So I'm just going to shake up my texture paint, and with whatever tool you decide to use, just start applying the texture paint around all your rocks and all over your base until you've got a nice smooth finish. What I like about these texture paints as well is you can sort of fill some of these gaps that are left from when you super glued the rocks on. Anyway, I'll just do that and then I'll be right back. That's our Astro Granite now applied. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to very quickly just rub my finger around the rim. This is just to ensure that once the Astro Granite has dried, we're going to have a nice, clean, crisp base rim with no seepage over the sides to sort of mess up the final look of your miniature. Right. That should do it. So I'm just going to let that dry now, and I'll be back for the next step. Right, the Astro Granite is now dry. Next step is to apply a layer of Draconov Nightshade to the top of the base we put on the Astro Granite. So let's crack on with that. Just loading up my brush and yeah, just slather it on. So I'll be back once that is done. Right, our wash of Draconov Nightshade on the Astro Granite is mostly dry now. So what we're going to do next is start painting the rocks in with some Skaven Blight Dinge. Just give them a bit of colour. So I've thinned some Skaven Blight Dinge down just to the side here. You possibly need to apply about 2 coats of this to get a nice solid coverage. And I'm just going to start blocking that in, trying as best as I can to avoid the Astro Granite with the blue wash on it. and I will be back when that is done. Right, that's our Escape and Blight dinge down. That took about 2 thin coats to get a nice even coverage on there. We're now going to wash those rocks that we've just painted with some Agrax Earthshade to give them a bit of depth. So if we open that up, and get that into shot, and then just put a nice liberal wash of Agrax Earthshade all over the rocks, and watch out for pooling. And I will be back once that is dry. That's the Agrax Earthshade wash dry now. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab some Dawnstone, and we're going to be dry brushing it onto the Astrogranite. So I will just prepare my brush with some of that now. Bear with me for a second. Now we want to make the grey quite strong. So I'm sort of going for like an ash effect, trying to. So just slowly build that up. As I say, we're trying to make the grey quite strong. You can sort of see what sort of effect we're going for on this one. Just keep building the grey up, and I'll be back once I've done that. That's the Dawnstone dry brush now done. Let me just bring up one of the ones I'm batch painting so you can sort of see the difference. So I'm happy with that. So the next step is to grab some Carrick Stone, and again we're going to be dry brushing this, but now sort of just onto the rocks. Alright, I'll just prepare my brush, wiping some of that paint off. Again, we're just going to build this up gradually onto the rocks, just to give them a bit of warmth compared to the coolness of the base so far. And I'll be back once I've finished this. That's the Carrick Stone dry brush done. It's just introduced a bit of warmth back to the base. So next I'm going to grab some Screaming Skull and just give it very light dry brush all over the base. So let's do that. This is just to blend the rocks back into the base to not make them feel so separate. Just getting some paint on my brush, and I'm going to be wiping the vast majority of it off, because we want to build this up very slowly. So it's only meant to be a very slight highlight all over. And I'll bring this back when I'm done. That's the Screaming Skull done. You can see how it's just tinted the tops of the little peaks on there, and sort of just highlighted the very edges of the rocks, and it just sort of blends everything together, I think. Next it's just the rooms, and then we're done, and I'm going to be painting that Eshin Grey. So I've thinned some Eshin Grey down. Excuse me, getting a bit tongue tied. And you're going to want to use a better quality brush for this, because you don't want brush marks in your base room. And I'm just going to apply a couple of thin coats of this, just all the way around. Don't worry if it's a bit transparent to begin with, and that's why we're going to be putting on a few thin coats. And that's the Eshin Grey base room done. And your base is finished, ready for you to, on this particular one, attach your scarabs when they're ready for painting. To make this process quick, I mean it's a relatively quick process anyway for the base, but to make the process quick, if you batch do your bases, and by the time you work your way through them and get to the end, the one at the start should hopefully be drying, ready for you to crack on with. Normally I leave my basing right until the end, once the model's finished, but as I say, because the scarabs sit quite flush with the base, it's going to be difficult to get to all that detail, so I'm doing all my scarab bases first. And speaking of the scarabs, I will be doing a painting tutorial for these guys, so if you're interested in seeing that, then please consider giving the channel a subscription so you don't miss it. If you have found this video helpful, guys, I really would appreciate if you could give it a like. It just helps with the YouTube algorithms. If you are interested in seeing my future painting tutorials, then as I said before, if you would consider giving the channel a subscription, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers guys, thanks a lot.